This is the Living in Mid-Bloom podcast, lighthearted and heartfelt conversations about what it looks like to live, heal, and blossom in middle age. I'm your host, April Pruitt. Let's get our bloom on. I'm here with my friend and guest, Karen M. Carlson. Hi, Karen.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited too. It's twofold because one, I have so many friends that have adult children. I've always wondered how they deal. And of course, they share stories with me, and I can't imagine how hard it is. Every child is different. But you had this book that came out earlier this year, Peacefully Parenting Adult Children. Now, peaceful and parenting seems like an oxymoron, but I'm sure you'll clear up some things for me.
I will do my best.
And before I forget, there will be a giveaway of a copy of her book. If you guys want to respond and let me know your thoughts, and I will add you in and we'll pick a winner and I'll let everybody know. So
Yay, winners.
Yay. So where to start? You had done an interview, and what was the guy's name?
Logan Crawford.
Right. Yeah, you did a great interview. It was on Spotlight TV, and I know it was through Atticus Publishing.
Right.
I know he had asked you, what made you decide to do this, but I've got to believe that you have 3 grown, I want to say boys, but men.
I have 3 grown sons.
Sons. Oh, yeah. Sons. Yeah. And I can't imagine what that was like, but let's just start off with I don't know, if you could name like the top 3 most difficult things about raising a child, a person.
Well, I guess initially I would say just the individual quirks that every person has, whether they're a child or whether they're an adult. Yeah. Each of us has our individuality. And that's something I think that takes a very long time for people to actually embrace. We try so hard to formulate these children to follow a path, to fit into a mold. And I think learning to embrace their different preferences is one of the big challenges, because it might be very different from yours. Right. And so I think that's one of the big challenges. For me, one of the other challenges was I had my 3 boys in 4 years, so they were very close together. So it was a pretty crazy time through all of their childhood, just because you were banging against each of them. And as I said, with their individual preferences and personalities and all of that, the good, the bad, and the ugly, it really made it challenging. And I think the third thing I would say is learning to help them develop relationships, learning to help them decipher those friends that that could be lifelong friends, and the friends that are really there to just exploit or bully or beat you up, or not maybe physically, but just emotionally. Right, kind of, I think helping them have a sounding board and being able to give them some constructive input into deciphering those relationships, I think are some of the big challenges. It's easy as a parent sometimes to give advice. But that isn't always the best way to engage and have a give and a take, so that they can feel like they're heard.
Exactly. Come up with their own conclusions about us, and learning how to communicate.
And learning the lessons that they need to learn when those relationships go badly.
Right. And that is tough. A friend of mine, someone I used to spend some time with, she has 2 boys, and one of them went to Brown University, is doing well. The other son, not as, I guess you want to say, not as, I don't know, has not done as well in life. And some of her friends would say, so and so who went to Brown, he's just doing great. You should be really, really happy about that. And she would say, well, then is it my responsibility that my son that's not doing well? Is that my fault? Her point was, it's like, it's just not me that decides how they're going to turn out. I mean, you can
Oh,
only
for
do
sure.
so much, right? I
Right,
mean,
right. And you have, when they're pretty little, you have a lot of influence in their choices and all of those things. But
yeah.
as they mature and as they grow older, outside people start to have much more influence on their choices and on their behaviors and those types of things. And all the way through, and the book really dips into it, significant others and those relationships and in-law and grandparenting. It really,
Mm,
it never ends. Once you're a parent,
right.
it never ends. It just keeps changing.
Right. As you say, new people come in their lives, and your role is changing, is constantly changing. And then it's kind of, to me, it's like riding a tightrope of, okay, what can I say? What I shouldn't say? Okay, I guess they have to make their own mistakes.
Yes.
To me, it's the toughest job in the world. It
Right.
is.
Right.
So, in just kind of reviewing your book, and I know you start out with empty nesters, having your kids really as the center of your life, because it's a huge responsibility to take care of these kids, and as they start going their own way, did you have any issues with pushing anybody out of the nest, or someone you were thinking he was getting involved in something too soon, or
There's always a bit of that. Sometimes the relationships they get into, the choices that they make might not be the best, but once again, they have to learn from those. So I have three sons, but I've been a mother-in-law 5 times. So obviously there's
oh
been
wow,
some, ups and downs and ebbs and
yeah,
flows in relationships and all of that. So one of the things that was so important to me when I was crafting the title of this book, which was very challenging, was the word peacefully. Like you say,
mm,
it seems like opposing kind of concepts when you talk about
yeah,
peacefully and you think about parenting. Those
yeah,
two don't seem to always go together. But
right,
my goal really was to help people see it as a way of learning how to peacefully parent adult children and to move away from. I've been a massage therapist for 25 years. So I've had a lot of people on my table and heard a lot of things, and people share a lot of things. And so, part of that is my own story, as well as all those people that are
sure,
family, friends, clients, all the people that kind of cross paths, is learning how to do better at not having it be a war of wills, not having it be my way or the highway, and learning to move away from the idea of control. And it took me a really
yeah,
long time to release that desire to control. And I
yeah,
actually just recently had said to one of my sons or whatever, well, I probably could have done a little bit better, this and that. And he goes, you did the best you can. It was like, and that was a really good affirmation for me to hear. It's like,
yeah,
okay, you're not trying to beat me up. Yes, nobody's perfect. I wasn't a perfect parent. Oh
right.
boy, let me tell you.
Those
But
are those are really, really kind words. Honestly, he's being
yes,
open and honest with you about that. That's
right.
awesome, and that they can come to that realization.
Right. With that particular son, it's taken a while for us, for him, I think, to realize that and express that and not have some other perceptions that maybe were not quite so positive. So sometimes
Yeah,
patience is really difficult in learning how to wait for them to come. A lot of times you hear that saying that when the kids get to be 21 or 25, oh, their parents all of a sudden get smarter.
right. Oh, that's what you. Oh, got
Oh, you
it.
do actually know something.
Exactly. Okay, I'll give you a little credit on that, Mom. Oh my gosh. Well, and like you said, especially as they get older, you see how each their own person,
Mhm.
and dealing with them separately, I guess, or figuring out what they need from you. What was and what is that like?
Eye-Opening Moments podcasts are real-life stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. They are moments that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. For the introspective mind that likes to reflect, discover, and find solutions or meaning in a complex life, listen to Eye-Opening Moments podcasts.
Well, I think for me, one of the things that was challenging is boys don't always use words a lot. You get one word answers or you get a grunt. They're not less necessarily ones that want to unpack things and talk about things and
Mm-hmm.
really explore things and their feelings. That just wasn't happening. So I felt like I was on the short side of that stick a little bit. And I
Yeah.
have learned a tremendous amount from my daughter-in-laws, my relationships with my daughter-in-laws,
Oh,
and also now my granddaughters, that I'm amazed how many words they use to talk about something.
I guess that was a big change. Your house is full of men. Yeah.
Yes, I grew up with 5 brothers and then I had 3 sons.
Wow.
So it was definitely a male
Yeah.
dominated environment. So I wasn't surprised by boys. I was kind of used to that. So there was no
Yeah.
surprises. Well, I shouldn't say no surprises, but it wasn't like everything surprised me. But
Yeah.
I think that was, at least with boys, it was. And so maybe that's something that I could have done better at, kind of priming them in their earlier years to use words, to express their feelings, and let that kind of mature along with them, so that it isn't something that, well, now you're this age, so you should be sharing things with me, if that makes sense.
Right. But then you don't know if is that just them, or
Right.
instead of maybe trying to push them to be something that they're not. I think, to me, that is the difficulty in having these different personalities and really not knowing them. They're learning themselves, and you're learning who they are too. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And like we said before, the outside influence makes such a difference as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when they get into relationships with their significant others, whether it's temporary or whether it's long term, like I said, those people have much more influence and impact on their decision making than you do anymore.
Yeah.
And being able to navigate that without it feeling like a struggle, without, just understanding, kind of the title of the book is Navigating Shifting Dynamics. It's
Right.
understanding that those dynamics can be very volatile.
Right. How soon did they leave your home? And then did they ever end up coming back and then leaving? And
A little bit of both. The oldest one didn't leave home until he got married.
how old was he when he got married?
He was 22 when he got married.
Okay,
So
so
he
he was
was
young.
on the young side. The second one, he did not move out until he got married. So my boys did not go away to college. So
Okay.
that's a whole nother phase of
Right.
parenting that was different for me. They went to local and they went into, the trades. Our oldest is a mechanic. So,
Mm-hmm.
he was always taking things apart, putting them back together. And the second one, he got married. He was 25.
Okay.
And then the third one didn't get married till later, but he went into the Air Force at 24.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
but before he went into the Air Force, he had moved in with some friends, and then things didn't go so well. And he
Mm-hmm.
came back after he had enlisted until he actually went for his boot camp or whatever. So, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
So your son that was in the military, did he tell you guys, or did he ask your opinion about it, or how did that
We
work?
didn't know anything. Well, I shouldn't say that. When he was 18, he was thinking about the Marines.
Oh, wow.
And once they get your name, they push pretty hard. And they just pushed a little too hard. And he finally said, "You lose. I'm not enlisting."
Yeah.
And so then it was, like I said, like 6 years later. And one day he just said, "I enlisted in the Air Force." I mean, he had not talked to us at all.
Wow.
That was kind of a surprise. And then he thought he was going to go right away. And he actually didn't go for like 7 months. And so that was when he moved back home while he was waiting to go.
Okay.
So,
Interesting. Wow.
yeah.
I know I left for college, came back, and then I left again to move to another city to be with a boyfriend who, those
hmm
relationships never last.
hmm hmm
But that's interesting, that kind of time of life. Did you notice, so when they were getting married or as they were getting married, did you see any big changes in their personalities once they started these relationships? I know you said they were huge communicators, but I just
hmm
wondered if they shared any thoughts about this person, that's coming into their life.
I think I would say that they left it more to me to kind of establish that relationship, have conversations with them, get to know them, ask questions. They didn't necessarily share, except maybe some basic, what their home environment was or what their family dynamic was, siblings,
Hmm.
parents, divorced, married, whatever that might be, maybe a little bit of that information, but not really so much about their relationship with that person.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. They were kind of close to the vest about that. And sometimes there's opinions you might have about that. And it's really tricky because, they've sort of made up their mind that this person is who they're choosing. And so even if you try to just raise like, are you sure? And it gets back and it gets twisted and it gets misconstrued and it gets ugly. So it's
Oh
it's it's
gosh.
tricky. It's a tricky wicket, sticky
Well,
wicket.
yeah. I can imagine because you've got this, new person and you don't know them at all.
Right.
And then how are they affecting your relationship with your son for the
hmm
better, or
Right.
is there a jealousy factor, or and that's tough, and then you kind of see how your kid basically handles
Right.
those situations.
And for our son that was in the Air Force, he was in Germany for 3.5 years and met his wife over there. She was
Oh,
in the Air
wow.
Force also. And we didn't meet her till the day they got married.
Wow.
They flew back to the United States to get married, and we did not meet her until they were getting married.
Wow. And then did they go back to Germany?
Yes,
Or-
yes, yeah.
Wow. How long were they in the States?
It might have been a week.
Wow.
Yeah, they really just flew back to get married, and then they were back in Germany. So yeah, it's like quick, quick,
Right.
turnaround, and yeah,
Wow. What was her family there? Did they get married near you, or was everybody
they
gathering
got
someplace?
married closer to her family. So our three sons were there, and one of my brothers and his wife, or just one of my brothers and then my mom were there. And then they actually flew back to closer to where we live. And we had a reception at our house and a
Oh, okay.
celebration at our house for family to be able to congratulate them and stuff. So it was a crazy time.
Yeah, no kidding. So when did they end up coming back? Because you're not
uh,
really developing any kind of relationship at
right.
all.
Well, they came back, their tour was over, and they came back probably about 8, 9 months later.
Okay.
But then they were 850 miles from us. So they weren't near
Okay.
us then, really, for
Yeah.
13 years. Only now we're actually closer to them than we were. So it's
Yeah.
communication is really learning communication styles. And in the book, it really, I like to say that communication is really the thread that is woven throughout the book, because I think
Yeah.
communications really is what it either binds us together or divides us.
It's
It
everything.
really is such an important piece. So learning, over the phone, it's hard, communicating
Mhm.
really about personal things, kind of about feelings or about family or about, some of those things just don't convey well over the
Mm-hmm.
phone, let alone, and that's one of the other things in the book. We talk about different kind of generational gap. And part of that is communicating is, there's so many, I mean, it's like now they just text. They don't even pick up the phone,
Right.
let alone be in person. And
Right.
so
You're right.
do you misinterpret a text? Is
Oh
something
my
come
gosh.
across kind of snarky, or maybe that's not the way it was meant, but that's how you perceive
Yeah.
it? Or you say
Yeah.
something and you think you're being funny. Well, that humor
Right.
just didn't come across.
Someone takes it personally, and
Right.
then what you don't know, especially with the daughter-in-law, is what kind of relationship do they want with you? Do they
Right.
want a kind of deeper understanding relationship, or standoffish? And I think that's got to be tough too.
I think a lot of that depends on the relationships they have with their mothers, fathers, siblings, whoever it might be. The other people that are influencing them, I
Sure.
think, has a big influence. So there are some that are more interested in feeling connected, and there's some that really kind of want an arm's length. They really are not so much interested in having your input.
Have you felt, and it wouldn't be unusual, that maybe there was, I don't want to say interference, but these relationships that may have caused a change in how close you are with your sons? I'm sure that's come up.
Sure, sure, sure. And the other thing is too, I think as a general rule, so much of our society now is more mobile that you don't have the nuclear family unit like when
Yeah.
when we may have been growing up, when past generations had, even after you got married, you still lived in the vicinity. You
Right.
still lived within a drivable distance. So maybe you had Sunday dinner together, or you got together for birthdays, or you got together
Hmm.
for different occasions and stuff. My husband and I, we have moved 8 times. And so we've moved a lot. And so
Yeah.
we were not close to family, so that when we had our children, we didn't have parents that were close by to help babysit
Oh,
or to give
yeah.
us a night off or something like that. So
Yeah.
that was very different for us than it was like for my siblings, who my brothers all kind of stayed close to home. I was the one who drifted far and
You
far
left.
and
Yeah.
far and farther and then back again.
Yeah.
I was very close with my mom, but as far as, with my daughter-in-laws and things like that, they were more closely linked to, their moms, of course. And I had a
Yeah.
conversation recently about kind of in-law. I had
Hmm.
my first granddaughter get married.
Right.
Hard to
That's
believe.
right.
Hard to believe. And I shared something with her, not because I have any answers, but I have some experience and have some perspective.
Of course.
And part of that was, I had said to her that, I've been a daughter-in-law, and I understand that sometimes that's not the easiest relationship. Part of that is because our society, unfortunately, mother-in-law has become sort of a bad word. It has a bad
Right.
reputation. I say mother-in-laws get a bad rap. They do get a bad rap.
Yes.
It's like there's an expectation that it's going to be a problematic relationship.
Right. They're here to take over and to keep control of.
Butting in. Mhm,
Hmm.
mhm.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
said, I've been a daughter-in-law, and I feel like I had a pretty good relationship with my mother-in-law. I said, but I've also been a mother-in-law 5 times.
Yeah.
So I just kind of shared something, and I really have said it really was kind of an inspired moment. It's not like any brilliance here or something, but what I said to my granddaughter was, that woman who is now your mother-in-law
Hmm.
has poured everything into this man from before he was even born, and has helped to form a man you love so much that you want to marry him.
Wow.
And I just
Wow.
I'm just grateful kind of for that inspiration, because it
Yeah.
really was something. And I just said, just remember that when you might get a little irritated or feel like you got a little burr, just
Hmm.
remember she's coming from a good place. and
Right.
try to create the relationship you want to have with her.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have a separate relationship with her than her son has with her. And so learn how to develop that relationship and don't jump to being angry or irritated or, ticked off about things,
Right.
because she only wants the best for her son and his wife.
Right. And it's out of love. It's out of love. And I'm
Right,
sure fear, because you want him to be happy.
right,
She knows that there's only so much that she can do once this happens. And
right, right.
just like you praying that, I hope this is the best thing for both of them. I hope that,
Exactly,
they will
exactly.
both work hard at loving each other, being kind to each other, and
Right,
then having, the families mesh and hoping that that works, because that's the other huge piece of it.
right. You want that relationship as well as each of them within it to flourish.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's kind of remembering that no matter if it's us or anyone else, none of us are static. None of us ever stays the same. And
Right.
so being able to accept that ebb and flow and give and take and growth can be challenging. And it's not always pretty. It's,
Yeah.
sometimes when we
Yeah.
learn things, you misstep, you say something wrong, you try to maybe exert a little independence and you say something or
Hmm.
do something that then backfires a little bit. So it's important to give yourself grace, but to give
Yes.
others grace as well, because we're all learning to navigate these waters that we're not familiar with. Even if you have other
Yeah.
children who might be married, every relationship is different. and
Right.
and our our I don't know if I would say our fear, but part of what as a parent is like, we only want for them to be happy. I had a daughter-in-law at one time, and her and my son were splitting up, and I took her out to lunch, and I said to her,
Wow.
I said, the only thing that we want is for both of you to be happy, and if that's not together, then so be it. And the ironic part about that is that they got back together at one point. It didn't last a long time, but they did get back together. And
Wow.
I thought to myself, if I had been really spiteful and nasty, that would have made things
Yeah.
horribly
Right.
complex and
That was
awkward.
huge, Karen. I give you credit. That was huge. And that's powerful, that you're not going to put blame on her and make her feel bad about something that's terribly traumatic for them
Right.
and everyone. So,
It takes two to enter into a marriage, and it takes two to exit a marriage.
mhm,
There's always, kind of like the his side and her side, and the reality. Sometimes our
right.
perspective we don't recollect accurately. So I guess I would say, going back to, come from a place of giving yourself grace, but giving others grace as well, because as I
Yeah.
said to my granddaughter, it's real easy. It's a slippery slope when you're with others and they start talking and complaining about mother-in-law,
Right.
this, to find something to complain about.
Right.
But don't go there. Don't give into that,
Yeah.
and find, because you can find something to complain about without having to look very far at all.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
And
sort of
the
rise above that a little bit, I guess I
right.
would say.
Well, and when your family is healthier, and your granddaughter, having you being able to share that with her, that what you didn't say was, well, look, you just make sure you take care of yourself, and if you have any issues, you let me. It's like, you can't come to something with love, with
Mhm.
these
Mhm.
prefabbed ideas, or fear, or protecting yourself. This is a huge step, and you hope that everybody's on their side, but you don't know what other family members are saying or are
Sure,
doing. Did
sure.
you ever feel disrespected by your sons at any point as they grew into adulthood?
I would say as they were growing into adulthood, I had to learn how to give them a little more latitude because they lived at home for the most part until they got
Yeah.
married. I
Yeah.
had to kind of give them that space. And one of the shifts in thinking that I kind of had to learn to embrace was sort of like at the very beginning of the podcast. I had to come to the realization they were no longer my children. They were
Mm.
my sons, but they were no longer
Ah,
my children. And that was one of those kind of
that's huge.
defining moments where I kind of shifted away from, okay, I don't have this control. It's not completely my responsibility to be helping to form them because they've become adults.
Mm-hmm.
They'll always be my sons. They're my sons, but they're not my children. Because when you think of children, you think of having more influence in them.
Right.
And so when I created the title for the book, Peacefully Parenting Adult Children, there are people that said to me, well, adult children, that seems like it's conflicting, but it's a terminology that is searched.
We're all adult children, okay?
Right, right,
All
right,
are.
right, 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 right. You know, when you're your mama's baby, you're your mama's baby.
Right. Exactly.
the
Exactly.
numbers, the number is inconsequential.
That's right. Give me the age of your sons just so I can, and I know they're pretty close in age, you said.
It's very hard for me to believe that the oldest one next June will be 50. How did
What?
that happen? How did that
You
happen?
planned them when you had?
I feel like, well, 50-year-old
That's
is my
illegal.
contemporary. How can it be my son? and then the next one is 47, and the youngest one is 45. So,
Do they still feel, I mean, obviously they're your sons, but
mhm.
do you feel like more of a friend or you still have that feeling of this is mom?
I don't feel like we ever moved into being friends so much. It might have been different with a daughter. I don't know
Yeah.
because, I don't go shopping with them. I don't go and
Right.
get a pedicure with them. I don't do any of those kinds of
Very good
things.
point. You don't toss the football when
So there's
you
not those kind of shared experiences that might bond you in a different way where you're bridging
hmm
between being the parent, being the mother, and being a
Yeah.
companion, being a friend, being, that type of
hmm
thing.
hmm
So I would say it was, it's a little bit different, I think, with sons. I mean, I now take my granddaughters, to lunch. I alternate and let
Yeah.
them just and they really enjoy that. And I really enjoy
Yeah.
just being able to be part of their lives and
Oh, I'm sure.
communicating that way. So it's not the search. And I think, from people that I know and my own experience, it's not trying when they're growing up and coming into adulthood. It isn't necessarily trying to be their friend.
Yeah.
It is allowing that relationship to evolve. And if there is an opportunity for it to move towards more of
hmm
companionship, friendship, whatever that might be. My youngest son does say to me, I wouldn't say frequently, but I'll make a comment and he goes, yeah, mom, that guilt trip stuff doesn't work anymore. Okay, point taken.
How about that?
That's right. That's right. And I love that
Oh,
he
funny.
feels like he can say that and
Right.
kind of let me know it's like, yeah, that's not working, as
Right.
I
Right.
try to be so subtle,
But that'll trick away, Mom. Yeah. I don't know anybody who had like a friendship with their parents. And maybe
Hmm.
it's because it's a different generation. I don't know.
Hmm.
But it seems like with younger people, it just it seems different.
Hmm.
And I don't want to say less controlled, but it seems like younger people seem to, and I hate, and I don't want to put anybody in a box either, but it's like they get away with things. Like they say things that I think are disrespectful. when
Mm-hmm.
I know that I don't think I would have lived if
Oh,
I
oh,
had.
oh, yes. There's definitely been those moments where, maybe not my sons, but
Right,
somebody says something that is
right,
kind of harsh,
right.
and when we kind of talk about that change and stuff like that, towards
Hmm.
the end of the book, I talk about role reversal,
Mm.
and that seems like you might think, oh, that's a long way down the road, but the years go by much more quickly than we
Yeah,
think. And
that's
and there's
true.
people that I know, and probably that there might be a moment where you're having to ask for your son or daughter's help or
Right,
assistance, whether
right.
it's with something physical, whether it's with something financial. So it touches on that a
Hmm.
little bit in the
Hmm.
book, and navigating, once again, a different phase of the
Of the
relationship,
relationship.
and
Yeah.
how you approach that and how you ask, and that can be very, very tricky.
Yeah, I can see that when, especially, when you're, and I don't want to use the word pride, but maybe it's like you've always been the one to take care of them.
Hmm.
And now you may be in a position where you need something from them. And
You're humbled a bit
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. But if that relationship can continue, then to me, I think it's a beautiful thing that can continue, and you being able, or any parent being able to ask, and that
Mhm.
child, that son or daughter, are willing to talk to you, or at least have an honest conversation. The ties with children and their parents are just
Mhm.
undeniable, because
Right.
if I think of everything that any of us have dealt with or difficulties, not blaming parents or whatever, but it just seems like it all goes back to childhood and what
Mhm.
those
Mhm.
relationships were, and then
Mhm.
how you chose to live your life based on what you experienced.
Right.
And obviously that would be the same with your sons. Are
Right.
they close to each other, as far, or do you know if they're close with each other?
They're not particularly close, and I'd say that probably their interests are very different. So they were never like super buddies, super close as
Yeah,
siblings. I wouldn't say they never stuck up for each other, because I know that they did,
yeah,
but it's not like they were in sports together, or like they didn't have a lot of the same interests. And the other thing is they live very far from each other. They live 850, 800 miles from each other, so all three of them are
yeah.
kind of spread. We've now sort of, I'd say, established where we seem to get together once a year, like all of the families,
Oh,
and we
that's
have,
great.
we go someplace and we have a weekend or something like that where we are together, and those are priceless, really, but
Sure.
chaotic and overwhelming as well. But trying to get everybody to agree, or trying to get people to coordinate plans and things like that. I hope that it is something that we can keep doing, because you might be with one of your sons, but those cousins never, I mean, my cousins, I had 26 cousins on just my dad's side of the family,
Wow.
first cousins, and
Yeah.
we got together often. The
Mhm.
parents played pinochle together, or
Right.
we got together for
Right.
different things. So I really knew my first cousins. I
Mhm.
feel like
Mhm.
from us moving, I feel like my sons didn't have maybe as close a relationships with their first cousins, and their children as well. They don't see them very often, but it seems like when they do, they really do enjoy each other and find that common bond, which is
Yeah.
heartwarming.
And I understand in part because my dad was in the military. We moved around a lot. But when we moved back, to where they were both raised, I enjoyed the time with my first cousins, because there's no other
Mhm.
relationship like that, when you have
Right,
that opportunity.
right,
So
right, right.
I get that. I find it interesting. They were close in age, but they just
Mhm.
ended up doing their own separate thing.
Right, right, right. Yep,
And
absolutely.
the good thing is, though, that so if you do this once a year, that people are willing to do it, to make the effort to be able to see each other, knowing that it's going to be possibly another year or until there's another, family event going on. So I
Right.
guess it's really about how to stay connected.
Well, I think one of the things it's important to either not necessarily as a whole, but also as individuals to try to create memories.
Mm.
When I'm with them, just to have a few minutes to have a one-on-one conversation, because having a one-on-one conversation with your own son or daughter is different
Hmm.
than being with their spouse and with
Oh
their
yeah,
kids and so just being able to have just a short little, how are things at work, or how are things here, or how are,
yeah,
and you may not get a lot back, but I think
yeah.
it's the effort to give them an opportunity to share something, or to connect a little bit more intimately than just the broad, group.
Well, and I think that that would be important to them to know that you're seeking them out individually.
Hmm. And sometimes I just send them text messages because text is easy. And I'll
Yeah,
send them a
yeah.
meme, or I'll just send them something that I see, and just letting them know I'm thinking about them and I love them. And I had to learn when I would do that not to expect a response.
Okay.
I respond to things, but that's me.
Right.
I'm
Right.
much more relational,
Right.
and they do not. And I've said to one of my sons, I'm like, answer, mama. And he's like, well, you usually send them and I'm at work and I'm busy. And I said, I know. And, it's kind of
It
like
takes so
you're
much
looking.
time. What is it, 10, 15 seconds? God, Mom, I don't have that kind of time.
I'm looking kind of for that affirmation. And I guess that's the other piece of it is my husband's saying that he says often is you give the gift freely. And it isn't just a
Yeah.
gift, but
Right.
when you're sending that, don't send it because you're waiting for the reply that says, oh,
Right.
I love you too, Mom, and you're the greatest. And what, don't have that expectation.
Strings
Just,
attached.
just send it because you really just want to send that sentiment, whatever that might be, or whether
But
it's a funny meme. But I also can let them know it's like, well, I do pay attention if you answer me back.
well, it's human nature though, especially as a mom. I think it's just a matter of I want to hear him say, I just want it. It's not
Mhm.
about pushing him to do something.
It's trying not to be needy.
Yeah.
It's being, I guess I would say
Well,
it's being hopeful, but not being desperately needy.
right. It's not like 5 minutes later, you're like, hello, did you get my text? Did you get my text? Oh my gosh. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
The kid thing, forever and ever.
Mhm.
What about being a grandparent? How are you loving that?
Oh, well, I have 8 grandchildren that
What?
range from 24 to 7.
Wow. A
And
24-year-old who just got married.
no, actually the 23-year-old got married. Her older
Oh,
brother is not married yet. So
oh,
maybe
okay.
happening sometime soon, but
Gotcha. Okay.
it's been great. It's been challenging because most of my grandchildren have lived far away from me. So I've
Mm.
not been able to have that interpersonal kind of my son that lived close for most of the years until we moved about a year and a half ago. He had 3 boys. So more boys. I know
Oh,
what to do with
yeah.
them. But
Yeah.
I was able to help take care of them and get them off to school and have them for sleepovers and
Oh,
create, and that has just been wonderful. And I have, volumes of
yeah.
great memories and stuff like that. And now where we are, I have 2 of my granddaughters that are close by. So like I said, I take them to lunch and spend time with them. And so it's been, even though they're a little bit older, I still
Yeah.
am grateful that I have that opportunity to spend more
Hmm.
time, kind of one-on-one time with them. So
Yeah.
I had one of my grandsons say recently, because I still go back up to do some work as a massage therapist or whatever, and he says, sometimes I think we see you more now, which is funny, which is
Yeah.
funny, because we were really
Right.
close to them. But sometimes when you're close, you take that for granted.
Yeah, yeah.
When
You
the
make a good
distance is
point.
close, you don't make the time. They're
Mhm.
much more kind of spits and spurts. Where
Mhm.
now when I go up there and I'm up there for several days or something working,
Yeah.
my daughter-in-law is great about always making sure that I pick the night that works for me and go over there for dinner and have an evening with them, and maybe
Oh,
we'll
that's
play some
great.
games and things like that. And so it's great to be able to have that. So
Mhm.
I know a lot of people have said, I wish I could have just jumped right to grandparenting and skipped over that parenting part, but it doesn't work
Really?
that way.
Really, diaper needs to be changed. Here you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a full, kind of full circle. The joy of
yeah.
grandparenting is you don't have all the responsibility for. It's
Mhm.
not like you're
Mhm.
still not trying to have input into who they are becoming and different things like that.
There's
And
less
and I'm
stress,
one.
I think, less stress
Right,
on you because
right, right. It's not the
you're
day
not
in and day out.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. You're not responsible for completely molding this person,
right,
but it's
right.
such a value added to have them have you in their lives. I think
I'd
that's
like to
awesome.
believe. I'd like to believe that that is so. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a wonderful progression of
Mhm.
family and life. And
Yeah,
my husband and I have been together a long time, and so I've come to realize, though, also with my daughter-in-laws and stuff, families where there has been divorce, and in the book I actually talk a little bit about silver splitting, because now
yeah.
I don't know if it's the same as it was, kind of in past generations, where parents would stay together until the kids were, out of the house or more
Mhm.
adult, and then they would get divorced because they had grown apart or something. And
Right.
so we touch on that a little bit in the book, but it definitely compounds relationships and holidays and planning and all of that, because you
True.
don't have just two sets of parents, you have three sets of parents or four sets of parents. And so that's something that is,
Yeah.
like I said, kind of, I don't want to say complicates, because that tends to have a negative connotation, but it certainly adds to the dynamics that you need to navigate to try to collaborate and make concessions and give and take, and especially with holidays and stick, that's always a
Yeah.
huge point of contention. It's like, well, we always do it on this date and it has to be this way. Like I said, have a little bit of grace, because other families have their traditions as well.
Yeah, you don't want to, if you have one, all you need is one part of the family that is just like, we're not going to be cooperative because we're pissed. And, and it makes it difficult for everyone,
Right,
especially for the kids.
right.
As you're parenting, your kids say they're older. Have they ever come to you with something that scared you? Because obviously daughters, sons, whatever, there can be a myriad of problems, whether it's substance abuse or being in
Hmm.
a bad relationship
Hmm.
or, something that would cause you concern. I'm obviously aware that with people that are in my life and, how they deal with it. Is there any advice? I know you mentioned that and you go over that in your book about
Hmm.
those kind of difficulties. How do you help them without, I guess, not being a helicopter parent, but what is your role in those situations?
I think for the most part, you have to play it by ear a little bit, but it's really primarily listening more than talking. It really is letting them have it be a safe space, a safe conversation where they can express themselves and they can really let you know that, something is going on that is really hurting them, or something is really emotionally
Hmm.
challenging, and not necessarily jumping to the rescue and say, well, you need to do this. But once again, they have to navigate that on their own. because you don't always have the same experiences. So you can't say, well, this is what I did and this is what worked,
Right.
because it doesn't work for everyone. I'll say, fortunately, I have not been through divorce, so I can't give advice about how to navigate
Mm-hmm.
going through a divorce or having to deal with an ex. I can't
Yeah.
do that, but I can listen, and I can still give some feedback, but they really have to implement it and apply it and decide for themselves
Mm-hmm.
what works for them and what outcome are they looking for. I mean, unfortunately, people get very angry and can be very spiteful, and the ramifications of that are,
Yeah.
not always pleasant.
Yeah.
And I can't say, well, don't do that because you're just going to be digging a hole, or you're just going to be creating, something.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be very volatile,
Yeah.
and that is really hard. So there are things that they have shared that have scared me and worried me a lot and caused me
Yeah.
tears and
Yeah.
stuff, but it's mostly just trying to listen and try to be as supportive a parent as possible without imposing shoulds.
That is a tough spot, especially if you're saying something like you said, you come off, say, more aggressively of this, you have to do this, you have to,
Mhm.
and they immediately just disconnect from that
Or
because
get
they're still trying
defensive.
to figure it out. Yeah. They're still trying to figure it out, and you're already telling them they need to do this or that.
They're hurting. They're
Yeah.
hurting. And sometimes when you're hurting, you can't think clearly. You
Mm-hmm.
can't see, you can't see into the future. You can't project what this action may
Mm-hmm.
produce.
Mm-hmm. And the other piece of it is judgment. Parenting is tough. I get it. But I recall times when I was hurting about something and my mother judged me. And I thought, okay, I
Mhm.
know now I can't go to her for this because
Mhm.
she didn't have the capacity for it. And
Right,
that's the
right,
way it
right,
is.
right. One of the things that happened after my dad died, my dad's been gone 28 years or whatever. And after he died, my heart was kind of broken
Of
and
course.
I was crying and stuff. And my mom just did not want any part of that. She was just like, stop crying. I mean, like yelling at me, stop crying. And at one point, I sort of reflected on it and I realized, I think we never want to see our children unhappy or hurting. And so she couldn't change anything about that situation. So she didn't want to see it. She didn't
Yeah.
want to see me hurting. She didn't want to see me crying because she couldn't do anything about it. And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
just realized, like, okay, I just don't cry around mom because it was
Right.
hurt. It was like it was hurting her to see me hurting.
And that's the tough thing. One, you're in a space where you can't even figure out what someone else is going through, let alone yourself. That can be hurtful. But I love that over time you realized, oh, this is probably what it is. Because I know there have been times when my parents would get mad at me or something because I was crying, and I realized that because they can't fix it.
Right,
They
right,
can't
right.
fix it. So the best thing to do is tell you to not cry.
That's right. I don't want to see it. If I don't
Yeah.
see it, then,
Yeah. So, and that's that.
that's right.
What? So the whole parenting thing, like I said, to me, it's got to be the toughest job in the world because you are this person that you're responsible for this life and you have to handle each life. Well, I shouldn't say you have to, but if you're
Mhm,
trying your best to do the best for each one, and
mhm.
that's all you can do. I
Right,
mean, it's
right.
not going to be perfect. There's no question about that. And then when they're adults, you have to have those same feeling. But like you said, you try your best not to say something that will have them running. But that's
Mhm,
just got to be so hard. And taking from this book, and I just want to read the title again, Peacefully Parenting Adult Children, Minimize Struggles, navigate shifting dynamics, and build strong and resilient relationships. And by Karen M. Carlson. And Karen, I'm telling you, all of that, just like every relationship, takes work.
Mm-hmm.
You don't
Yeah.
get to sit back on your laurels in any relationship that matters to you.
It's not
And
on, nothing is automatic.
no, no. And more than anything, I think a parent child relationship is the one that changes the most because you are there for life.
Right.
I was watching something on TV the other day, and the mother was a dentist, and he was in dental school, and he was just there to, follow her and, learn things. The mom was like, we have to be professional. So at one point he's like, "Oh, mommy, where are the gloves?" She's like, "I'm Dr. Smith." I mean, "Oh, right, 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 Dr. Smith." And the patient's like, it's like, forever mommy,
Yes.
forever
Yep.
mommy.
Yep. Yeah. The
So,
role, when you know them from day one, whether
right,
they come into your life as an adopted child or
right,
adopted youth or,
right,
whatever they might be,
right.
there is a day one. There's
Yes,
always a
there's a
day
new
one where
love in your life.
they are
Yeah,
your responsibility. Right.
yeah, yeah. If there were, and there are a lot of gems in your book, starting from empty nest and struggling with missing them and having your own life and making those major changes, and then your kids going through these monumental relationships in their life and people kind of being forward in their lives and less of you in their lives. And then the next generation of grandchildren and developing those special relationships. Tell me, what are you most proud of about this book? Because again, you go through so many different avenues and changes, and you do it in a way that it's kind of non-confrontational. It's really just a matter of communicating
Mm-hmm.
and being calm. And I guess that leads to the title, Peacefully.
Right, right, right. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, I do talk a little bit in there about estrangement. And I think that even if it's not a permanent estrangement, I think there are still phases where that distance feels a bit like you're really estranged from this son or daughter that you thought you knew so well or you thought you were so close to.
Mm,
And I think that
yeah.
it goes back to, having grace, trying not to dwell on the hurt, but reaching out periodically, not being a nuisance, but just letting them know that you still want to be a part of their life. And sometimes, despite your best efforts, it doesn't come out the way that
Yeah.
you want it to.
Yeah.
And that's where I think there really is an importance of having someone you can talk to, someone you can process with, whether it's a counselor or a therapist or something that can be somewhat objective, because
Mm-hmm.
you can't be objective in this
Yeah.
situation or whatever.
Yeah.
There's too many emotions, there's too much history, there's too much of all of that to just
Mm-hmm.
be black and white. And I think
Right.
sometimes that's a problem when people see it as black and white. It's either on or off, good or bad. There's a lot of gray. There's more
Yeah.
gray than anything else.
Yeah.
So it's not expecting to have those moments, but like I like to say, the ebb and the flow, really
Mm-hmm.
the moving towards and moving away, becoming an adult as our young people are becoming adults. It isn't always pretty. It isn't always done well. But then being able to move back and being able to come back and have that grace and have that perspective, I guess I would say, that
Yeah.
you are my child. You are my child, and I love you. That doesn't mean that they're always right. You can't always take their side because they're not always right. I guess that's one of the funny things when I'll say something about one of my sons, maybe to my daughter-in-law, and that doesn't sound like something that you'd expect a mom, but I can be objective too,
Yeah. Yeah.
when they're not behaving
Right.
well, or they're not doing something that, in my opinion,
Right.
it's always a matter of your
But
perspective.
that's
So,
being honest.
mhm,
You're not going to say, yeah, he did that crappy thing, but I don't care. He's perfect. As that's
right.
just not.
And not expecting like the in-laws to call you mom or call you dad or whatever. It's like, I always, it's
Yeah.
like, I don't expect you to call me mom. You have your mother, have your
Right.
father or whatever, call me by my first name or whatever. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's so many different things that help to
Yeah.
create a relationship that can thrive and survive those ups and downs. And then there's times when we don't do it so pretty and we don't do it so well.
Well, and allowing people the opportunity to be themselves, not demanding,
Mhm.
well, now you're going to have to call me this, or now you're going to, well, we always did things this way. And when you make demands on, the new family members, you're making demands that they don't want to do. That's already setting you up for issues and problems. So,
Mhm. Mhm. Right. Hopefully they're in the relationship for the long haul. And so keeping that vision of the long-term relationship. So
hmm
today's disagreements or today's hiccups,
yeah,
how is that going to reflect in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? Does it become something that they're always coming back to go, oh, well, yeah, she this or he this, or,
right,
does it become one of those defining moments, not in a positive way?
right, right. No, that's a very good point. So, well, Karen, this has been a delightful conversation, and I'm so proud of you. Like, you've been a great friend, and I highly recommend this book. And remember, people, that there will be a giveaway of this book. Just reach out to me, and then we'll figure out who wins. So,
Yay!
so yay. Karen, have a beautiful rest of the day. And I thank you so much for sharing your personal stories and for this great information that I know will be a great guide to so many people.
That is my hope. That is my hope for sure. So
All right,
thank you so
honey.
much for having me. I enjoyed
My
every bit of it,
pleasure.
and look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, ma'am. Bye. Thank you for joining me today on Living in Midbloom. I hope you found this episode insightful, meaningful, and maybe it's given you something to think about. I invite you to share your positive reviews or ideas on topics you would like me to touch on by leaving your comments on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict. We are all divine beings who just want to be seen, heard, and loved. Have a beautiful day.